Mark Broom, let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Hoping for the best, the US says its optimistic talks with North Korea will go ahead, despite the regime's threat to walk away from the dialogue table, as Seoul and Washington ready for a joint military drill. Tough talk. South Korea's ruling party and the presidential office vow to deploy all possible means to counter Japan's trade curbs against South Korea. Plus, the vote was close, but enough to get the nod. For the next 5 years, Ursula von der Leyen will lead the European Commission, the first woman to ever hold the position. Our top story this morning, US President Donald Trump has reiterated he will not rush into concluding a denuclearization agreement with North Korea. His remarks on Tuesday come amid strong criticism from the North over Washington's planned joint military drills with South Korea. Kim Hyo-sun starts us off.
North Korea's foreign ministry has condemned the U.S., saying its scheduled joint military exercises with South Korea could put denuclearization talks at risk. The ministry warned Tuesday that it could reconsider its agreement to resume working-level talks if the exercise takes place as planned next month, and it may also consider resuming nuclear tests. The North has long criticized such joint exercises as, quote, a rehearsal for war. This comes as the Pentagon announced Tuesday that Seoul and Washington are preparing a routine joint training program in August. A spokesperson for the Pentagon explained that the joint exercise has been scaled back in order to facilitate diplomacy with the regime. Meanwhile, President Trump has highlighted that his administration has made significant progress in regards to North Korea. Speaking at a cabinet meeting in Washington on Tuesday, Trump said he doesn't feel any pressure to reach a quick denuclearization deal with Pyongyang.
The relationship is very good. I think we've made tremendous progress on North Korea. And again, time is not of the essence, but I think good things will ultimately happen.
This seems to be a reaffirmation of his administration's stance that it will not rush into concluding a deal with the North. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
The nominee to become the next US Secretary of Defense says joint military exercises between Seoul and Washington are essential to deal with North Korea's potential threats. Mark Esper's comments came as Pyongyang warned nuclear talks with Washington could be off the table if the drills go ahead. Kan Hyung-woo reports.
President Trump's nominee for U.S. Defense Secretary has made it clear that joint military exercises with South Korean troops won't come to an end anytime soon. In a written answer before his Senate Armed Services Committee confirmation hearing on Tuesday, Mark Esper said joint military drills are essential to maintain the readiness of U.S. forces Korea to cope with North Korea's potential threats. Responding to a question that asked about the value of the joint drills, the nominee added the combined exercises ensure that both countries' troops can respond together. Esper also said in case of a contingency, he will avoid unintended casualties while taking out North Korea's weapons of mass destruction by working with related agencies. He added U.S. troops on the Korean peninsula are improving their ability to reduce threats from North Korea's WMDs and missiles. Though Esper did not specifically mention a country, he said he's going to pressure U.S. allies to contribute more fairly to combined security. Mentioning Iran, North Korea, and terrorist groups around the world, Esper said America's military must be prepared to respond to regional threats. He added the enemies of Washington must see diplomacy as their best option because war with the U.S. will force them to bear enormous costs. The Senate Armed Services Committee is expected to make a recommendation to the full Senate for a vote on whether to confirm Esper as Trump's next defense secretary. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
2 more F-35A stealth fighter jets have arrived at South Korea's Cheongju Air Base from Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, further boosting the South Korean Air Force's ability to evade radar detection. The Air Force said Tuesday that the new arrivals came after its first two F-35As arrived in late March. Following a 2014 contract with the jet's manufacturer Lockheed Martin, South Korea plans to deploy 40 F-35As by 2021 at a cost of around $6.5 billion. The Air Force says it plans to have around 10 F-35As ready for combat by the end of 2019. A New York Times report has revealed how North Korean leader Kim Jong-un procures his impressive fleet of luxury cars, including his newest armoured limousine. The report also lays out the steps the regime takes to avoid international sanctions that should, in theory anyway, prevent Kim enjoying the finer things in life. Our Lee Seung-jae has more on this complex money trail.
Among the many luxuries North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is known to enjoy is the German luxury car brand Mercedes-Benz. But a big question has always remained, despite the heavy sanctions on the regime, how does Kim get his hands on the top-of-the-range motor vehicles? According to a new report by the New York Times, his cars, including his latest armored Mercedes-Benz Maybach S600, are smuggled into the north via a circuitous route. The report says stops include China, Japan, South Korea, and Russia. Through this extensive sanctions-busting network, Pyongyang has been able to import more than 800 foreign cars and trucks, including luxury models from multiple countries, since 2016. The report, put together in partnership with the Centers for Advanced Defense Studies, noted that analysts use software and systems with connections to the U.S. intelligence community and the U.S. military in order to support their work. The study focused mainly on Kim's two armored vehicles, at least one of which appeared publicly during his second summit with U.S. President Donald Trump. However, due to the number of countries involved in the smuggling of the vehicles, the report says their origin is unclear. Taking the example of a case in 2018, cars were reportedly smuggled from the Netherlands to China, then to Japan. The cars later arrived in South Korea's port city of Busan in a Togo-flagged ship, which then headed to Russia before possibly making its way to Pyongyang. Due to the intricate steps North Korea takes to receive the luxury items in question, watchers say it's difficult to crack down on the illegal shipments. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
US President Donald Trump's new point man for East Asia and the Pacific is in South Korea as we speak for a 3-day stay. David Stilwell will meet soon with officials from the top office as well as senior foreign ministry officials to discuss ways to strengthen the alliance and boost cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. In a recent interview with a Japanese broadcaster, Stilwell was asked about possible US intervention in the Seoul-Tokyo trade dispute, to which he said both sides should talk and reach a positive resolution. So, with no sign of a let-up in the trade tensions between South Korea and Japan over Tokyo's export curbs on Seoul, senior members of South Korea's ruling party in the presidential office held emergency talks on Tuesday. They pledged to stay in close contact, prepare for all possible scenarios, and offer a helping hand, a much-needed helping hand, to local firms that will be impacted by Tokyo's actions. Kim Min-ji with the details.
The ruling Democratic Party and the presidential office have vowed to deploy all possible means to counter Japan's trade retaliation against South Korea. Following a closed-door meeting on Tuesday, the two sides agreed to first and foremost minimize the fallout on local firms.
In order to minimize the damage on Korean firms, we will support all possible means to find alternative import partners and support the firms' efforts to find solutions. We will also seek to turn this into an opportunity to develop the dynamics of the economy and boost industrial competitiveness.
Earlier this month, Tokyo restricted exports to Seoul of 3 high-tech materials that are used in the manufacturing of semiconductors and display panels. The two sides said they see the latest move as retaliation against Seoul's court ruling that Tokyo must compensate victims of its wartime forced labor, and Japan stepping up guard against Seoul's economic growth, as well as changing dynamics in Northeast Asia on the back of improving inter-Korean relations.
We are preparing for all possible scenarios, keeping in mind the situation can persist. If Japan decides to take further measures, it will not be a desirable move for the future of Seoul-Tokyo relations. We will also step up efforts on all fronts, including boosting diplomatic negotiations not just with Japan, but other neighboring countries as well.
The two sides vowed to step up cooperation and communication to keep close tabs on the situation and share any developments. They added that related government ministries are working on measures to boost industrial competitiveness and support local firms, saying a comprehensive plan will be unveiled in late July or early August. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea's National Intelligence Service briefed the National Assembly on Tuesday about its findings on Japan's reported violation of UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea. Intelligence officials also filled in lawmakers on the latest goings-on in Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un reports.
In a closed-door briefing to the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee, National Intelligence Service Chief Seo-hoon said that several foreign-flagged ships suspected of carrying North Korean coal were detected coming in and out of Japan's ports. According to opposition party lawmaker Lee Eun-jae, who was in the meeting, at least 3 suspected ships have been found making port calls in Japan recently.
The NIS explained that by looking at a website that analyzes shipping information, the Rich Glory, the Shining Rich, and the Jinlong have been detected entering Japan's Naha and Noshiro ports.
Last year, the Seoul government banned these ships from entering South Korea as they were confirmed to have brought North Korean resources to the south. The spy agency also said that despite its warning that the ship's entry is a clear violation of UN sanctions resolutions, Japan is still allowing the entry and not actively taking appropriate measures. During the meeting, the National Intelligence Service also touched upon the latest Seoul-Pyongyang-Washington summit, calling it a significant event that boosted stalled denuclearization talks. It said that North Korea's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho and First Vice Minister Choi Sun-hee prepared for the trilateral summit with the help of the Workers' Party's Unification Front Department. In the upcoming Pyongyang-Washington talks, the NIS told the committee that preparations for working-level negotiations are ongoing and that it's likely that the U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, and former North Korean ambassador to Vietnam, Kim Myung-gil, will lead the talks. Concerning reports that claim North Korean nuclear negotiator Kim Hyok-chol had been executed as punishment for the failed Hanoi summit, the NIS said Kim appears to be alive. Meanwhile, the NIS also reported that Pyongyang has been suffering economically due to the ongoing international sanctions. It said that Pyongyang's trade volume dropped to $2.8 billion in 2018, which is nearly half of the figure on year, and that its trade deficit increased by 17.5%. The NIS reportedly added that no unusual movement has been detected at the North's major nuclear facilities. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
South Korea's National Assembly is holding a ceremony today to mark the 71st Constitution Day. In a speech, Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang stressed the importance of public unity and the need to revise the country's constitution to better reflect changes in modern Korean society. On July 17, 1948, the constitution was adopted, laying the groundwork for South Korean democracy. The constitution was last revised in 1987 after decades of authoritarian rule. It has come under fire recently for vesting too much executive power in the hands of the president. There were plans to amend the constitution last year, but they collapsed as political parties couldn't reach a compromise. Duty-free sales here in South Korea hit a new record high in the first half of this year on the back of new store openings and local fashion brand sales. According to the Korea Duty-Free Shops Association on Wednesday, sales in the first half reached $9.9 billion US. The sales growth is being attributed to the opening of new duty-free stores in central Seoul and Incheon International Airport. Local fashion brands are also becoming more popular among Chinese shoppers, adding to the duty-free revenues. Now, one of the most popular summer festivals in South Korea is back. Well, almost anyway. Starting on Friday, Seoul will host the Hangang Mongttang Summer Festival along the banks of the Hangang River. More than 70 programs and events will help visitors hopefully beat the summer heat. For about 1 month, people can enjoy camping, a bit of that, cruising, water-based fun, movie screenings, even paperboat races, a night market and much, much more. Most of the events are free of charge as well, but check the website for more info. The European Commission has elected its new president, and for the first time in its history, a woman is filling the role. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So this is a historic day in Brussels. Give us the details.
Germany's outgoing defense minister Ursula von der Leyen was elected president of the EU Commission by the European Parliament on Tuesday evening, but it was a very tight vote. Out of the 374 votes she needed to garner from a total of 751 MEPs, 383 votes were cast in her favor, 327 against, with 22 abstentions. Her new role requires her to provide political guidance when drafting EU laws, managing the EU's budget, and enforcing EU rules.
The trust you placed in me is confidence you placed in Europe. Your confidence in a united and a strong Europe, from east to west, from south to north. Your confidence in a Europe that is ready to fight for the future, rather than fighting against each other. Your confidence in a Europe that will take the big challenges of our times together. The task ahead of us humbles me.
Beginning her 5-year term in November, when she takes over from Jean-Claude Juncker, she will have to face challenges such as climate change, migration, and internal division. Also, because von der Leyen had such a narrow margin of victory, she may have problem passing legislation through the parliament. U.S. President Donald Trump has admitted the trade war between Washington and Beijing has weakened his personal friendship with Chinese President Xi Jinping. According to Politico, Trump also explained during a recent White House event that Washington has been losing an estimated $800 billion a year to China. Meanwhile, a World Trade Organization appeals ruling filed by China 7 years ago could pave the way for Beijing to impose sanctions against Washington's tariffs. HBO's global mega-hit TV series Game of Thrones earned a record 32 Emmy nominations on Tuesday, the most nominations earned in a single year by any drama series. Game of Thrones was aired in 170 countries and finished its 8th and final season in May. In the U.S., an average of 43 million people watched each episode of Season 8. If Game of Thrones wins the Best Drama Series title, it'll be its 4th win in that category and will become one of the most honored dramas alongside shows like The West Wing and Mad Men. The Emmy Awards ceremony takes place in LA on September 22nd.
Now, life and info time, where we focus on information that we do hope will come in useful for your everyday life. Today, we're going to talk about some useful tips for people planning summer vacations in South Korea. I'm happy to say our Go-Ryun Hee is in the studio with us. Rooney, thanks for joining us. Let's start by explaining how people here in South Korea are preparing to spend their summer vacations, be it in South Korea or overseas?
Yes, Mark. So data released by the South Korean government shows that almost half the people have plans for a summer vacation. According to the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism survey last month on around 1,000 people, more than 48% of the respondents said they will head somewhere this summer. And almost 70% of them are considering whether to spend their holidays in South Korea. And looking at a separate survey, it was done among Korean employees by HUNET, an education service institute. It showed employees spend an average of around $480 on their summer vacation. This poll also showed why some people in South Korea don't have vacation plans. And when asked why, more than half said the financial burden is just too much.
Well, it really is a shame that a lot of people are hesitating because of money issues, but I guess it's just the way the world is going at the moment, unfortunately. So if you do have a tight budget, do you have some tips on how people can save money but also have the opportunity to let their hair down a bit?
So, well, as you know, Korea is a great country to travel by train.
Yeah.
And today I want to introduce you to a special rail pass that allows passengers to enjoy unlimited rides. But remember, this is on special routes for a set period of time. Korea Tourism Development introduced this train tour package this year. You can either purchase a 3-day or 5-day pass. And for a 3-day pass for adults, it's around $50 per person. The 5-day pass is roughly $70, and with this pass, there are a total of 6 sightseeing trains you can ride on, and they go on to different parts of the country. For specific routes, this is a map of the different lines. And they are different from regular trains because you can go to special places like Dorasan Station, just south of the inter-Korean border. Also, inside one train, there are some convenience services you can enjoy, such as a foot bath. For more information, visit korealtravel.com.
Okay, well, you certainly don't get a foot bath on the KTX or the Seoul, the regular train services here in South Korea. So that sounds like a lot of fun. But we should be honest here. Not everyone wants to stay in South Korea during their summer vacation. Do you have any tips for people who will be flying abroad this summer? And maybe could you give us some ideas about how to fly more comfortably, because it can get rather cramped, especially if you're in the economy section of the plane?
Sure, and there's one way you can do that, and only for a few extra bucks. And this mainly applies to people using low-cost carriers to fly internationally. Many low-cost carriers in Korea provide a so-called extra seat service. You can purchase an extra seat or two for a relatively cheap price. It's really helpful when you want to lie down during the flight or are traveling with toddlers. For domestic flights, it's around $10, and for international flights, prices go up to around $50. However, keep in mind that you can't purchase the tickets in advance, meaning you have to go to the airport and see if there are some vacant seats left on your flight. Although some airlines do provide this service on domestic flights, it's mainly applicable to international ones, since they carry fewer people most of the time.
Yeah, that's very good information. I wasn't aware that was actually a thing you could do on these airlines. It's something I'm definitely going to try next time if I have a few extra dollars lying around the place. So besides from the very helpful tips you've provided us all today, can you give us anything we should perhaps watch out for, some pre-travel precautions?
Sure. So when you use travel booking websites, be sure to check whether the flight or hotel are refundable or you can cancel before you pay, because they're having a rising number of complaints related to this issue.
Yeah, I've been caught out by that myself before, and that really isn't nice, especially if you then have to go on and book another flight and another hotel, so you're paying double essentially. Thank you very much for your report today. It was very helpful so people know what to do during their summer vacations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. We'll need our umbrellas again today and do expect sultry weather as Korea's central region and Jeollabuk-do provinces are forecast to see passing showers, while highs in most parts will be a couple notches higher today. Meanwhile, Jeju and southern provinces will be affected by a monsoonal front. Monsoon showers will bring rain to Jeju this afternoon and will gradually spread to other southern provinces by tonight. The further south you are, the heavier rainfall you will see into Thursday. And Jeju and southern coastal regions will see 50 to 100 millimeters. Now, the fifth typhoon of the season, Tropical Depression Danas, that formed in the Philippine Sea on Monday, continues to travel west to northwest, which could impact Korea this weekend depending on the track the storm takes. And the typhoon could bring heavier showers to the country. But for now, frequent monsoon showers are in the forecast across the country for the time being. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul, South Korea. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. We have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.